Yeah, so we need to talk about the U.S. dollar today, and it's important to understand that the U.S. dollar, whether you think it's something that should be going up or down, it is really relevant for you as an equity investor and as an investor in different asset classes because of the correlation. So I thought we'd take a couple minutes and look at some correlation charts, because it's much easier to get the bigger picture right than the small picture. And if you get the big picture right, then most things, like 80% of things, should fall into place. Let's have a look at this on a chart that I created here. And this is you should see 4 squiggly lines, and essentially these are 4 different asset classes. The one you want to focus on first is the blue line, and that's essentially the dollar index. It's a basket of currencies versus the dollar. So you can see that essentially since March of last year, 2020, the dollar has been under pressure. We can go into various reasons why that is. Largely has to do with fiscal and monetary stimulus, and so the dollar's come under pressure. But I think it's most important to understand that if you look at these other squiggly lines, for example, look at equities, that would be this orange line, which is the S&P 500, has gone up at almost the exact same point when the dollar peaked. Equities bottomed. How about commodities? That's this teal line down here, the next one. What did they do when the dollar topped? They bottomed and they've been going higher ever since. And then gold, and the correlation here is not as perfectly inverse, but you can see the point. Gold started a rally for the most part when the dollar topped. So why is it so important to understand dollar? To some extent, it has to do with global flows of assets. Some of it has to do with interest rates. But a lot of it is just because these assets are priced in dollars. So when the dollar goes down, all else being equal, some of these assets have to go higher. And that's particularly true in parts of commodities. So when you go more near term, like the right here and now in mid-January 2021, what you're looking at is a potential balance that the dollar is trying to do. And when that happens, what do you think these other asset classes are going to do if the dollar were to bounce a little bit? And I'm not here to make a forecast. This is more sort of I'm trying to look at this lens of education. But we have seen a bit of a bounce over the past few days in the dollar, and commodities have come under pressure. Gold has come under pressure. Hell, Bitcoin has come under pressure, and equities are resilient. But I would imagine if the dollar really starts to bounce, then equities would probably pull back. So it's a lot easier, as far as I'm concerned, and easy is always a relative term, but it's a lot easier to get the big picture right, the dollar, and try to really focus on that, what it might do. And then from that, looking at the correlations, which in this case are heavily inverse versus equities, commodities, and to some extent gold, and then see what they might do. So when I saw the dollar move to the lower end of the range and get very oversold, and I'm going to quickly make a separate chart now, just looking at the dollar index. We're going to look at this with some candlesticks so you can see this a bit better if you like to be more visual. What we did notice, and I'll make this maybe a weekly chart, is there's a lot of lines on here that I shouldn't be having on here because it's confusing. But you can see that the dollar, for the most part, has come back to where it was in January 2018. So I think this is a logical spot to see for a somewhat substantial bounce in the dollar, even if it's only lasting for a few weeks. But that could put some near-term pressure on, to get back to the beginning of this quick video, maybe some pressure on equities. So meaning that by virtue of the inverse correlation, the dollar being short-term oversold, increasingly right here right now points to us thinking that equities may for the very near term be overbought. So I hope this is helpful. Give us a thumbs up, likes if you enjoy this, and we'll see you soon.